Are we live? Are we live? Are we live? Looks like we might be live. And it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Happy Valley Hobbies. I'm Mr. Katie, and these are hobbies that make me happy. Tonight, we are doing, starting with the Hunter line covered bridge. Setting up my stream right now just to making sure everything is set up. And right now it's me, myself, and I. But I would have to say tonight, things got off to a little bit rocky start. I'm about 5 minutes late than normal. Because trying out a new light situation, as you can see, is a little overly bright. But we shall see what it looks like in this position. Hey, there's no flicker. I might have to get more of these lights. But this, yeah, I actually like that light. Okay, so we'll switch over to the bench position. All right. Now we're over into the bench position. We are doing the Hunter line post 50-foot post queen covered bridge. This is what it, well, one of the suggestions of how it looks like when it's done. But I'm actually liking this new light. It's the other overhead lights that I got are unfortunately they interfere with the camera, so that's not a great thing. But this new light that I purchased over the weekend apparently does not have that flicker, so that's good to know. As I slowly try to improve the situation of the studio. Sorry for the moving of the camera. The camera is not on the best of stable platforms. But there we go. Array. Today is March 31st. So tomorrow is April 1st. I will turn around and change the calendar while I'm at it. One of the things I am doing with my layout, as you can see, that some of it's missing because I'm in the process of installing. Remote switches so I can remotely operate the switches. Originally, this is my original setup for them. Uses a basically a hardwood doorknob, a bamboo skewer, double throw, double pull switch, which in some cases I don't need for the actual power routing, but I do have that as an option. A couple of pieces of molding with a couple of screws and a nail. And when I first put this in, I found out that the nail that I was using a little bit short, so I had to get a longer nail. And so this one has a longer nail. This is actually blue tape that sort of keeps things from bouncing around. I've taken the tape off this because it's so I can adjust how deep into the fascia I'm going. Also found out one of the things I did was drill into the 1x4, which is on the end here, so I can have this so it's flush, because this is designed to turn around and have everything flip over and the backdrop winds up going, the other backdrop of the other side comes and connects to over here and covers this up. I did find out after putting it together and all that, found out I couldn't really grab onto this. So I've had to modify this so I can actually turn around and actually grab it through the fascia. I'm thinking about eventually having, pictures of showing what I'm doing on that. But then after doing this with the switches and also adding the track power onto the modules and all that, I can actually run trains without using alligator clips to clamp onto them. But yeah, the Hunters from Hunterline on the new Trax modeling has turned around and actually have started this as an actual as a build along project. And one of the things that they do is they do the weathering first. And this time, instead of doing it live, they're because they have such low bandwidth at their location. It actually makes more sense for them to turn around and pre-record everything, and then not have to worry about the quality going in and out. And I mean, they do a lot of stuff. They also show what tools that you should have. Right now, I'm planning on using a razor saw to do the de-stressing, because that's one of the things that they suggest do first is add, de-stress it to add grain to the wood. And there is a lot of wood involved. They use basswood, and basswood doesn't really have a grain. So what we're doing is adding a grain to it by taking a razor saw and adding grooves to it. Things that you don't have to add grooves to is the roof shakes. So they don't need them. Also the roof sheathing. Is this roof sheathing itself you're not actually seeing, if I remember correctly. So nut and bolt washers, and then these are all the different pieces or sizes of wood. And what they suggest is turn around and keep these plastic tubes along with their labels for the whole process. This is so you don't get things confused. You don't accidentally confuse something with the wrong style of the wrong style of wood, especially since there's a single piece of 8x8, and there's also 8x8 ties. So you want, even though the ties are all the same length and obviously different than this, but the thing is, when you get these, the 1x2s, the 3x10s, everything is the same length, but they are sort of kind of small enough that you might, especially the 6x10 and the 6x10 and 6x6, since they are, once you re-weather them and all that, you could accidentally get them in the wrong, have them mixed up. So let's get scissors. You might have scissors around here somewhere. Sorry for the slight confusion. Trying to get the lighting, the new light all set up and all that. I have wound up not being able to get everything set up properly tonight, but here we are. I think there's no particular order in which ones to start on. So we'll start with the 1x6s. Should be able to come out. There. And it's pretty much the de-stressing is basically taking a sharp, or even well, I would say mostly sharp razor saw. Yes, right along the edge. What you're doing is you're adding grooves to the wood. With some of the thinner ones, as you may have noticed, that it might wind up curling it on one side, but then when you curl the other side, it winds up flattening it out. All right. Hello, Shoreline 614. How are you doing this evening? Thank you for joining. You probably missed the beginning. What I'm doing is the Hunterline 50-foot covered bridge, which is theoretically look similar to that. Right now, I am what's called distressing the basswood, because from what I understand, basswood doesn't really have any grain to it. So when you stain it, it's sort of monolithic. Whereas by de-stressing it or adding grooves into it, you wind up making it so when you're using the using stains, it winds up being slightly different in the valleys and well, I would have to say right now I'm feeling pretty good. Short line. Just found my new job has been pretty much at mandatory overtime since I've been working there, and I just found out that overtime is now optional. It's one of those things of since I just found out about it, I'm planning on doing the overtime until they unless they don't need me, because I'm doing the shipping and receiving, so it's a little bit sort of a little confusing on exactly when I'm needed. For the past couple of days, it's been hurry up and wait. It's like something would come in, and it's time sensitive, so we have to get it through the whole process as soon as possible. And then it's like, okay, now we're waiting for a truck to come in or production line to give us stuff to do. It's not like some of the other stuff where there's a constant go go go. It's a little on the go 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 go. Okay, wait, go 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 go. Wait. But it's the nature of it's pretty much the nature of shipping and receiving. Well, thank you for coming in for your first time. I modeled the 1870s in HO scale. Hence the reason why I'm doing one of the reasons why I'm doing a covered bridge. Because covered bridges were sort of popular during the 1870s. Apparently, the reason for the covered bridge is that the covering the bridge winds up making the lifespan of the bridge longer. Because this was before they came out with preservers and all that fun stuff, and being able to make steel cheaply. The wooden covered bridge was the way to go for a long time. One of the things that wound up, this is a queen post, which you can just barely see the queen post in this picture, which I do have. This is what a queen post bridge looks uncovered. This is actually the first Hunter line kit that I built. It's not quite perfect, but this is in HO scale, and so is everything else. Yeah, I would have to say I like the 18th or the 19th century locomotives because they were a little bit more colorful. Now they usually burnt wood because there was plenty of wood in the United States. But what had happened is that coal came more cheaper and all that. So railroads, first the railroads that had coal went over to they went over to coal first, and then eventually all railroads went to coal, or in some cases went over to oil. And coal had a tendency to be really ruin a lot of paint jobs and all that. So that's why they went to a basic black. But the wood burning locomotives did have a tendency to be a little bit more colorful. As you can see, each of these plastic tubes are labeled on what size they are, and one of the suggestions that the hunters did for their kits and all that, they suggest that when you do one size at a time and then put everything back into the appropriate tube, so not to mix up sizes. But so short line, which 18 1800s locomotives do you have? Ah, the Cotton Belt. That's interesting. I believe the Train Freak is also a modeler of the Cotton Belt. I would have to say the 1800s there were very few and far between railroads at at the time. You had the Central Pacific, Union Pacific. I think the Central Pacific didn't the Central Pacific become the Southern Pacific? I'm not up to uh, knowing the history of the Western railroads. Ah, all right. So you follow the Train Freak. Yeah, same territory but different era. That's good, neat. And that's one of the things about the railroads is that there's so much to choose from, but unfortunately there are some eras that are underrepresented. Underrepresented. A little bit too tired for big words tonight, apparently. Um, like I know there's a lot of representation for the Civil War, but I do the 1870s, which is after the Civil War or the Reconstruction era, which, interestingly enough, they were starting to require air brakes, but they were still using Lincoln pin. The 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 normal knuckle coupler is sort of like an 1890s yeah, 1880, yeah, 1880s, I think, is when the knuckle couplers became slowly became a standard between all the railroads. Now we're getting into packages where there's a lot of a lot of pieces. And it's at this point where probably after I get one distress, it's going to go back into the bag. This will be a lot more easier to keep track of which ones that I did do, which ones I did not. I would say that not that much brass. There are locomotives that are sort of like very early 20th century locomotives that you can backdate them um, to look like the 1800s. But a lot of the locomotives I have right now are sort of Civil War era that I have updated to look like they're more modern, or modern in 1870s parlance. There are a couple of locomotives I have that are 1880s, which I have to turn around and backdate. And sometimes it's the small details that a lot of people don't realize. Like as I said before, it's like they were starting to require by law to have air brakes on. And the interesting thing is, in doing the research, sometimes depending on how the car was set up, it might have only had brakes on one truck, not on both. Then there were other ones. I think I could be wrong on this, but I think it was the Central Pacific, or one of the Western Railroads. I forgot which one. I almost want to say it was Central Pacific. That had they had a policy of, if a car came onto their property and it wasn't hooked up for air brakes, they would turn around and they would put an airline through, so the airline would be able to go through between the cars, and then charge the owner of the car the work that was done on it, which I would assume made a lot of people not happy. Doing a modification to their equipment without saying that, hey, this is, would you like this done? It's like, no, we're just going to do it and do it that way. But it was, I don't remember which specific railroad it was, but I do remember hearing that it was one of the Western railroads. And that was set up so they could control all the brakes. I haven't heard exactly how the operation of working with non-air braked and air braked cars. That's something I haven't really delved into yet, but I would assume that it's a very interesting subject. And as you see, sometimes with the thinner pieces, when you score them, they start to bend. But once you score the other side, they almost go back straight. Goes over there. But yeah, I would say distressing pieces of wood is one of the more longer ways of doing things. Now, normally I start the stream at 7, but today didn't. I was about 5 minutes late, so that's why I'm assuming that's why there's not as many people tonight, because they assumed, oh, he's not on at 7, so they wound up doing something else. Which the way I'm planning on using this channel is just to basically show off what my different hobbies are. Right now I'm starting with model trains, but eventually I'll do other hobbies that are mine. Probably the next one will be electronics, because it was model trains that sort of got me into electronics. Because well, thing is, you had to learn how electricity works, making sure that the trains work properly. And I mean, it is sort of a sub hobby of the hobby. Well, I would have to say, when it comes to starting starting modeling buildings, I would go with buildings that are smaller. Kind of going, models is I got a bunch of their smaller buildings, which is not quite within reach right now, but they're small little buildings. A little bit more. This is more of a, as you can see, it's a kit of, okay, it's a bunch of sticks and put them together. Congoano models are laser kits, so they actually tab and slot together, so they're a lot more beginner friendly. I do not think he does a lot of stuff that is prototypical, but it would get you into at least wood structures. For plastic structures, it's been a while since I've done plastic. But again, I would stick with smaller buildings that about the maybe about the size of your fists. And then I would also not worry about what era they are. Basically, just build them and learn from mistakes and etc. And then as your confidence builds, then you can get into larger, more complicated buildings. But I also would, ask around, for what other easy buildings to put together. One of the mistakes that I think I've done it myself, that I was like, "Ooh, I need to in order to build the ultimate layout, I need to have this specific kit, and then wind up, making more and more of a mess of it. I had for a short time, or for the longest time, I was actually modeling the Delaware Hudson in the 1950s in the transition era. I wound up buying this $100 or $300 brass locomotive, and every time I touched it, it just got worse and worse, and I got to the point of going. When I transitioned into the 1800s, it's like one of those things of, I got a small layout, not doing that era anymore. It just made no more sense to keep it, so I gave it to somebody who, I told them to practice on it, because I took a $300 locomotive and turned it into a probably a $75 locomotive. But it's one of those things of, I knew he would, someone sort of like would be, like the locomotive, and maybe get back up and running. Who knows? It's a younger fella. But, yep, starting small, and not necessarily a scale. It's starting with small projects. When I was younger, I was, going to have this big, massive, humongous size layout that they were like putting in Model Railroader magazine, and seems that as I got older, the layout just kept on getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And right now, it's, as you see, part of it right here, it is, the layout is now 8 foot long and 1.5 foot wide. That's another thing about the 1800s, is that you also don't have to buy almost $1,000 worth of cars of the same exact model to simulate a mile-long train, mile-long unit train. I mean, they had most of the cars were box cars, but they usually weren't all the same box cars. There's usually a lot of variety at that time. But I usually run for about an hour. And I picked this time because it was between 2 shows, or 2 channels about this time. One is, I think, is Jim Tedesco's. He does it before me, and after me is Third Rail Thursday, which, interesting enough, not many. I think there's only one person that actually does 3 rail. I think everybody else does 2. I actually don't know who the third who's doing Third Rail Thursday this week. I almost want to say it might be Go Via or Go Home. I could be wrong. Actually, I think shelf layouts are smart, short line, because you don't have to worry about ducking under them and all sorts of issues that you have with a large layout. Um, I do remember, I forgot the name of the famous model railroader, but somebody asked this particular person, what skills they need to build the perfect layout. And the person replied, well, you need to build 8 layouts first. Because by the time you do the 9th one, then you'll have all the skills you need. So that's one way of looking at it. It's also why I've also been doing some dioramas. Because my layout right now is not really set up for bridges. So I'm putting the bridges on small little dioramas. And sort of give them a place for display, and also to work on techniques that that I'm not using on the current layout. I did one recently where I was doing a little stream, and I saw a thing there where they just took Mod Podge and made a stream out of it, and unfortunately, it wound up lots and lots of itty bitty bubbles. So I have to rethink that one. And nice thing about it, since it's on a diorama, I don't have to worry about it, ripping it out of the main layout. Both an O and HO. Interesting. Now for the O scale layout, is that going to be O scale or O gauge? The reason why I asked that is that O gauge, apparently a lot of people that do Civil War, they do O gauge. That's what they're doing the Southern Railroads, is because O gauge actually comes out to 5 foot in O scale. And since the Southern Railroads are more 5 foot, that's why they go with O gauge. Which is something I didn't. It's one of those things of, it was sort of a thing that I sort of kind of knew about, but not many people at the time were being that nitpicky. But then eventually the proto variations of the Proto 87 were coming out, or Proto 48, because there were people that wanted to have the correct gauge, and there was other ones that wanted the correct wheel tread, because originally the NMRA standards, which some of them still use today, they were designed for reliability, not for scale accuracy. 3-rail O scale. All right. Yeah, I have heard. Last night on New Tracks Modeling, there was a talk about someone doing doing 3-rail that was so realistic, and they were taking really low shots, so they're more almost even with the rail. That they got to their modeling was so good, is that it wasn't until they actually got higher off the ground that you could see the 3rd rail, and a lot of people were impressed with that. And there's also, I'm not sure if you know about uh, Anthony Dodge, the railroad outsider. He does European stuff, sort of around pretty much German, using Markland, which is that in itself is I want to say it's third rail, but it's not. Well, it's third rail, but it's not the rail that it's not your American Lionel rail that you would think of, uh, because uh, uh, instead of having a basically a third rail that in some cases is a a much darker color. Markland actually uses small little pins that stick out of the rail. Uh, so you and instead of using rollers like Lionel uses, they actually use I guess they're called skids. Um, basically the skids actually sort of slide over the small little bumps. Uh, and if I remember correctly, I think they span at least 3 or 4 at a time. So there's always a connection. Now this is a 1x12. I'm assuming the 1x12s is the outside. I haven't read the instructions as much as I should have. Yeah, siding 1x. Another thing is that in the kit you also get a full diagram exactly what everything is, sort of like an engineer's drawing. And in some cases they show different. You can either have like a lap joint, or as this one is sort of like a double butt joint, because it's not that large, since the cross base is not that large. You can theoretically build the bridge without any of the supports, just the stringers and the ties and all that, and the wood is strong enough and the equipment's light enough that you can turn around and not worry about that. I would have to say the superstructure is, I want to lean towards cosmetic, because these bridges were designed for smaller style locomotives, so a big boy would definitely not fit through here. It might fit, but it would look really, really odd. Yeah, I believe 3-rail O gauge is 5 foot, a 5 foot gauge. Then again, O scale, if I remember correctly, was originally a toy scale, so they weren't really. It was more of not as being accurate, but just something that would get boys to go ooh ah and all that. And that's why a lot of O gauge layouts, or period O gauge layouts, had a lot of accessories. Now, are you planning on having shoreline operating accessories, or being a little bit more realistic? Because operating accessories are nice when they work. If they're not working, well, that get annoying. But there is a lot of a lot of different channels that are out there that either do 3-rail, O gauge, or there are also a lot of them that do HO scale. So you can get inspiration from them. Surprisingly, the ones that I've come across, the Lionel or the 3-rail stuff, surprisingly is a bunch of young guys. I think there's FWG Trains. Apparently he's had he's a high schooler now, and I guess he started when he was in elementary school with his YouTube channel. And I think his father is slowly taking over it because, well, you know, now that he's a teenager in high school, there's things that are distracting him from model trains. It's like he's exploring other options, which, well, when you're at that age, you can. That's interesting. One of the thing is that I can't. One of the things I'm always been hearing is that the hobby is dying. Can't get any younger guys or gals, to get interested in. Which I'm finding. To me, I'm finding it's not as true as I think perception is. I mean, I myself, I want to say my hobby career started when I was 2. Because there's a picture of me Christmas time with a Lionel train set, me jumping up and down, and at first it was sort of like only a Christmas thing, but then eventually I would lean towards, it's not the hobby itself that's dying off. I almost want to say it's the local hobby shops are, because from my impression is that the younger people, they're going online to find their stuff. They're not going to yeah, I completely agree. You hang out in different circles, which I think is unfortunate for both sides, because neither side is getting the other point of view. I myself, I was before I got back to work, I was helping out with a YouTube channel called New Tracks Modeling. They're the ones that are actually sort of like sponsoring this build along with the Hunter line. They're also doing other. They do have other what they call build alongs, where they have a seasoned modeler building it, and then we're sort of like following what they're telling us what to do. And one of the things that I know they're trying to look into is remote operations. How is remote operations are going to be in the future, where you can turn around and operate somebody's layout from across the world. So, I think it's Silicon Valley. Yeah, trade shows and online. I do a lot of stuff on. I do a lot of stuff with train shows and all that because I'm looking for older equipment. I'm not looking for. Uh, um, well, the equipment I'm looking for, the manufacturer, some of the manufacturers don't even exist anymore. So you usually see those at train shows. There are some. Stores that are out there that do that, but what they usually wind up doing is that they're buying estate sales, basically, and which it's sad on its own setup, because someone who loved the equipment long before you have, and you're no longer able to do so. But I yeah, that's another thing is automation. Is that um, well, I would have to say automation is good if it's I want to say a display layout, something that's showing off, something like uh, miniature wonderland or something like that, where it's more of an attraction, not necessarily uh, an operating railroad. Um, I've been to Northlands, and I mean that's extremely impressive and all that, but it's basically uh, trains running around a circus. But one of the things I would have to say is as much as I've been in this hobby, I've been in a modular club, because usually uh, I've been in a spot where I couldn't really have a layout. Hence the layout design kept on getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to I got to a point where I actually was small enough where I can actually build something. And I think that's one of the positives for me for this pandemic is I've finally got stopped being an armchair modeler and actually started building stuff. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I don't know how size the club layout is, but they're usually on the large side, and uh, and you can't really have it set up where you can have everything right. But where is your club that you go to? Because it is one of those things of, I know the clubs themselves have been sort of severely affected with the pandemic, because clubs are designed to actually have people meet together. Northern Virginia Model Railroaders. Huh. Now, how old is this club? I know the club that modular club I belong to was late '90s when it got started. I know. I actually know this. I'm not sure if they're still in operations, but I know that there was this. It was a three rail. It was a three rail O gauge layout. I want to say in Hudson, New York, if I remember correctly. That it was actually outside third rail. It was the third rail was not in the center. 1949. Current layout since 1976. Wow. I would hope that there's none of the original track is there because if I remember correctly, 1976 they were still using a lot of brass track. Hopefully they've gone to nickel silver at this point. As you can see, my wax paper is slowly going through. But place the switch panels with iPads. That's one of those things of it depends on what you're going for. I mean, for my current layout, I am planning on going DCC, and it's mostly for the sound. I mean, for control, if I was planning to have no sound, I would have just gone with regular DC. In fact, I do have a half-built streetcar layout that the idea, which is mostly going to be display layout, is not going to have sound because, well, streetcars, since they were electric, are relatively quiet. And also, it's basically going to be just two loops and all that. So that I'm planning on doing as DC. All this track was hand laid. That's actually one thing I want to see about getting into is hand laid track. Because of one of the things that I want to see about doing is going to require, when you're talking about dual gauge stuff and all that, that's usually hand laid track is the way to go. I just realized something. Usually I try, as I said before, I try to go for only an hour, and apparently, let's see, I started 5 minutes late, and it looks like I'm ending 10 minutes late. Well, Shoreline 614, thank you for hanging out with me. Let me switch cameras again. All right. And unfortunately, my monitors and stuff like that are not really set up for live streaming at this point, but Uh, VCC with hand throw switches. That's a good way to go. Now will you be having sound on your? Oh, I keep on forgetting that there's a slight delay. Well, thank you very much for staying along with me, Shoreline 614, and thank you for staying with me and all that. Because I think because I started a little bit late, people did not realize that I was on. But I would have to say, see you around, and my outro is basically, it's like the world needs more love. So find your passion, add some silliness to it, and spread it around. And half the engines have sound. Cool. All right, I'm going to end the stream now.